everybody? Chief Patrol Agent Ryan Landrum here at the U.S. Border Patrol Academy, coming to you with another What's Important Now podcast. On Sunday, May 28th, 2023, the U.S. Border Patrol turned 99 years old. Now, we know that over the course of time, the average tenure of a Border Patrol agent is anywhere from 20 to 25 years. They spend their careers protecting our borders, our families, and our communities. And then they go off into the sunset and enjoy retirement, or sometimes they go off and do other things. Every once in a while, though, we have rare occasions where men and women in this organization will dedicate their entire professional lives and their entire adult lives to not only defending our borders, but also serving the people of the U.S. Border Patrol and the larger organizations of Customs and Border Protection. Today, my guest is one of those people. For context, again, I said we're 99 years old. This gentleman has spent 38 of those 99 serving as a U.S. Border Patrol agent. That's 38% of our history he's been around. Although he needs no introduction, I will give him one. I'd like to introduce to you all the Acting Deputy Commissioner for Customs and Border Protection, Chief Kari Huffman. Chief, welcome.
Thank you, Chief. It is indeed a great pleasure to be able to be here today and participate in this podcast. I look forward to our conversation.
Yes, sir. Hey, so right up front, I introduce you as the Acting Deputy Commissioner. That's the number 2 person in charge of a 65,000 plus person organization, but I called you Chief. Tell me what that means to you when I say Chief as a U.S. Border Patrol agent, and is that offensive?
So clearly it's not offensive to be called a chief in the U.S. Border Patrol. It's like the greatest honor you can have in the Border Patrol is have that chief title, and it's so it's something it's revered in our organization. It is, and it's certainly not offensive. I happy to be called chief over any other title. I know that when Chief Reyes became congressman, he preferred to be called chief. Yeah. When Chief Aguilar became the deputy commissioner, he preferred the name chief. I like the title chief. By coincidentally, it's also my grandpa name. My grandson calls me Chief instead of Grandpa or anything else. So it's very special to me. So I love the term and I embrace it, and I hope people continue to call me that.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, being at Basic Academy, there's probably people in this organization who are even close to retirement who've only known you as a chief. Yeah. Yet you've been here for 38 years. So again, going back to the 38 years, it's going to be a heck of a long conversation if we talk about every single year. I don't think we have enough time for that. So what I want to do is maybe talk a little bit generically and generally about the first early years. You're clearly a native of West Texas. You enter on duty on February 3rd of 1985 as a member of Border Patrol Class 173. For context for the audience, we just graduated the 1215 session of the Border Patrol Academy. I'm not going to say that dates you. I'm just going to say contextually we're at 1215. Yeah. But maybe talk to me a little bit about maybe the influential people you've had in those early years that kind of kept you engaged and on the right track of becoming what we call a Border Patrol agent.
Well, I appreciate that, yes. My early, from West Texas, but back then if you were from Texas, they sent you to California. From California, they sent you to Texas. So I entered on duty in Imperial Beach, California. And it was a newly formed station, broken out of the Chew Station. Great work. We were in the midst of another border crisis, if you will, at that time. We were setting records at that time. I know in '86 we arrested 1.6 million people. There's maybe 2,000 of us in the Border Patrol back then. Wow. When we were dealing with that. There's a lot. But I remember the first day after I got out of the academy, I was going to go by the station the day before just to make sure everything's squared away before I checked in. Back then when you left the academy, they left you with your pistol, but you did not have any ammunition. They were going to give that to you at the station. And I just remember this. I walked in and my first supervisor was Bob Hines. And he welcomed me and you come in be in tomorrow, it's great to be here. And he thought of this. He said, "Do you have bullets for your gun?" I said, "Oh, no, they haven't issued it." They said, "We'll get them tomorrow. Don't come to work without any bullets." He pulled 6 bullets out of his loops. Back then, we didn't have speed loaders or semi-autos. They were revolvers, a 6-shooter, and you carried bullets in loops on your belt. Pulled 6 bullets out of his loops and handed them to me and said, "Here, make sure you don't come to work with an empty gun." Mm-hmm. And that I've never forgotten that. That's my first taste of some great leadership about it. He cared for me and for what it meant, and so he just just that forethought. And I thought, this is a great guy. This is a great leader, and this is a great place to be.
Yeah, the part that I appreciate the most about that, you talk about leadership, and I've said this in several podcasts. This doesn't make the leadership.
No,
you've got 4 stars. I've got 2. He had bars on.
Yeah,
right. You can be a leader at every level.
And he was. And I there's a lot of those things, but I'll never forget those kind of stuff. It's important.
Yeah. So early on, also you apply for this Border Patrol Tactical Unit. I'm thinking in 1987 or so. This is a brand new organization, new capability. And it's funny. We just had the centennial celebration yesterday, where Vortec is now has a kind of a parachuting capability. So the maturation of that over time must be really, really cool for you to see. But back then, it probably was a whole different organization. And what led you to that, and what did it keep you engaged?
So I was able to get in the Vortec team in 1987. That was a great opportunity. It was pretty new. They hadn't done a lot. They were originally primarily formed to respond to riot situations in Florida and different places we've had, and haven't done a lot of operations. But they had it opening up, and I thought, this is something I want to try, and I was able to get on the team. And I remember when I got on the team, my wife talking about, well, I'm going to be gone a lot. I said, no, they're hardly ever called out. We don't go that much. It's be great. So I get on the team, and I graduate in October of '87. November, we had our first call out with the Oakdale riots in Oakdale, Louisiana, where the Cubans took the guards hostage, there could be a whole podcast on that sometime, how that turned out, and it turned out good in the end. And then that first year I was gone 9 months out of that year that I said I would never be gone much. So that was a little bit of a challenge, but we saw a whole new idea of the mission and what we're able to do, and we were just evolving as an organization. We didn't have the training, the equipment, the gear. All we had was a lot of unjustified confidence in our ability to accomplish anything, and but we were able to do so. So it was very interesting, and it helped kind of, formulate my thoughts. When I first got in the Border Patrol and they sent me to California, and I was a West Texas kid, and all I wanted to do was figure out how to get back to Texas. So it was a job when I first got in. Yeah. That's what it was, looking for a job. But the more I was in it, the more we began to understand who we are, understand what our mission is, and what we do on behalf of this America, which most of America didn't know what we did for them back then. Right. It became much more important to me, not where I was, but what I was doing. Yeah. And that was a transition. It didn't happen day one. It happened about a year or two in it is when it became, that was really what was important, is what I was doing more so than where I was stationed.
Yeah, so these inflection points, we were discussing this before we started. I had the same kind of experience where, my first anniversary was 9/11, and the sense of mission and the people you're doing it with tend to impact the rest of your career. And yeah. I sense that even though this was back in 1987 and maybe you didn't realize the impact it was going to have, but this is why you're here 36 years later at that point.
Yeah, I've been exactly the Vortec missions we went on. I've been in any places. I've been South America several times. Mm-hmm. I've been to the U.S. Virgin Islands. I've been to South Africa. I've been to Mexico. I've been to Guatemala. I've been to a lot of places with this job. I still have credentials that says I'm a Bolivian police officer, okay. Policia Nacional de Bolivia. I've been sworn in credentials as a Virgin Island police officer as well with this job. So it's taken me a lot of places, and I've really enjoyed the opportunities this organization has given me.
Yeah, it's we talked about this too, but and I think we're going to get here a little later in the podcast as well. But this theme of just a kid from West Texas. Right, I'm just a kid from South Texas. Never once in a million years did I think that growing up I could do the things and see the things that I have seen and done over the last 23 years, and I can't imagine what that sentiment is for you over 38. Oh
yeah, the opportunities are boundless in this organization, and they've just gotten more. Oh, sure. They've just gotten more and more with the transition of the organization being part of CBP and the broader mission that we have now, and how things have changed. There's you can do anything in this organization, and there's opportunities there if you just want to reach out, grab them, and take hold of them and go with them. It's up to each individual about what they want to do, how far they want to go, and how things they want to do. I enjoyed every second of it.
Yeah. Hey, so you mentioned you wanted to get back to Texas. Did you?
I did. I got transferred back to Lubbock, Texas.
Lubbock, Texas.
Near
the Panhandle, yeah.
Yep, and it was a great station that's not active anymore, but Man, that's some of the best work I ever had up there, and it's a very growth period for me because it was a small station in the Panhandle, but it wasn't run like a normal line station. We did everything. We did undercover operations. Mm-hmm. How does Border Patrol done it? Well, we get the book and read how and talk to the U.S. attorney. You know, I've often said jokingly, turns out it's going to be true, and we'll talk about it later on. Is that being a Border Patrol means not knowing what you're doing has never been an impediment to our success, right? So we were doing undercover operations, buying false documents from vendors. This is during one of the early amnesty programs, Immigration Reform and Control Act of '86. Mm-hmm. A lot of fraud in there. We were catching smuggling loads off Interstate 40 coming through Amarillo. We would knock off loads up there. We did long-term criminal investigations. We did one criminal investigation that what the State Department called it the largest white-collar crime scheme, visa fraud scheme they'd ever done. And we did it in Lubbock, Texas with some GS-9 and GS-11 Border Patrol agents back then and doing undercover ops and stuff. So it was pretty, just because we had no limits. No one told us we couldn't do anything. Yeah. We just our own initiative did a lot of great work. The Border agent in charge there was Don Vaughn, probably the greatest field leader I've ever worked for, ever. And he was another great leader that I influenced me greatly about how to treat people and how to lead people and how to stay engaged.
I love it. It's the influences we have over time, good or bad, can shape who we become and how we treat people in the future as well. So you make it back. When did you start promoting?
So I had probably one of the most unusual careers you'll ever see. I was a GS-9 in Lubbock, Texas, mm-hmm. and then I was promoted to be a GS-11 assistant chief in headquarters.
Okay, that does not sound normal.
That's very unusual. At the time, again, it was in 1996. Okay, they were still still INS Border Patrol. Mm-hmm. INS had an intelligence program. Border Patrol had sporadic intel programs, different sectors. So the decision was made, we're going to put Border Patrol agents in the INS intel program. So Robert Harris was selected to go up there to be an assistant chief, and we worked very well together, known each other for a long time, and they wanted me to put in for the job as well. I had done some details up at headquarters. What got my foot in the door was my experience in Vortec, because in several of these teams, these missions I led, we were in South America. I was the intel lead on those and developed that, again, outside the normal training patterns. I was able to make the criteria. So I went up there as an assistant chief with Robert Harris to stand up the intel program. And what you see now in the Border Patrol Intel program, it started with myself and Robert Harris, established the first protocols, the first standards, the first collection requirements, the first training venue, everything we did about Intel. It's pre-CBP days. Me and Robert Harris started that, and from 96 to 97, 98 time frame we did that.
When the first time you and Robert Harris were running around making changes in the Border Patrol?
So that was the first time I met Robert Harris. He was actually detailed. He was agent in San Clemente, and I was in Imperial Beach, and somebody brought him down because he just wanted to work the line. Oh. And I met him there, and then we went through Vortec Class 4 together. Yeah.
So if you don't know, this is a former Chief Patrol agent, actually former also Deputy Chief of the Border Patrol at one time. Yeah. Robert Harris, since retired as the director of JTFW, I believe, down in San Antonio when we were doing that. But it brings up a good point. For those young agents that are listening, and I say this all the time, what's the key to success? One of the keys to success is learning your job and doing that correctly. The other key to success is being a good teammate, because you never know when your path is going to cross and how many times it's going to cross in the future that will lead to opportunities. So maybe talk a little bit about just being a good teammate very early on in your career and how that impacts you later.
So that's very important to be to understand who you're working with, to be. You always need to be the first one to work, last one to leave, do the job. Never be the person someone can always count on and depend on to be there and do the right thing and make the right choices. When people now ask me for career advice, I give it's pretty simple for me. It's two pieces. One, make a hand, and I always got to explain what that means. That's cowboy talk for be a good worker. Just make a hand. Whatever job you has in front of you, do that the very best you can, because there's no guarantee. Those doors won't open if there's another. If this job you're doing right in front of you is not being done the very best you can, you have to do that. And secondly, I tell people, never take a job you're not prepared to do the rest of your career, because there's no guarantee of another one.
That's a great point.
And if you're not doing the first part of what I just told you, there will not be another opportunity.
That's right.
And so I always tell people that we have different career ideas. Hey, I want to do this first and that first. I mean, those are good ideas, but there's no guarantee any of those are going to work if you're not making a hand.
It's funny too, and it's tremendous advice. I mean, that's 38 years worth of experience talking, distilled down into about a 30-second conversation.
Yeah.
That if you're listening, you should be listening hard. But I also kind of laugh because I have these same conversations with junior agents and stuff. But I maybe undervalue the how much value hindsight has, experience over time, and like that's easy to say for us. Tell that to the guy who's trying to come, or the gal who's trying to come up, and it's one of those things like, one day you'll get it. And it kind of makes me chuckle, but it's fantastic advice, and I hope people are listening. So 1996, you're an assistant chief. Then what? What happens?
So we're at headquarters for 3 or 4 years trying to make a hand, right?
You're all right, apparently.
Trying to, to open up, and I had the opportunity to, but I needed to go back to the field, right? Because that's where your heart is. And so I had the opportunity to go back and be the patrol agent in charge of the Marfa station. And again,
Marfa's in West Texas.
Marfa's in West Texas.
A whole lot like home.
And there's a couple of great leaders there that worked for me down there. That was super, so I talk about it in person very influential at headquarters, Robert Harris and the people I worked with up there. I go back to Marfa, Texas. I got selected to be patrol agent in charge, and there was a small station. Had 2 first line super. Back then they still had. They were your patrol in charge and assistant patrol in charge. And we had first line supervisors, and there was 2 guys that had been there a long time that all right should have been picked for that job. They were senior to me, more experienced than me. They never had gone outside of that town, but they were. And one was named Lonnie Mendoza, and one was named Terry Norman. And I didn't know them very well or knew of them. And you're wondering, are they going to be resentful? How's it going to be? And I cannot tell you, express my appreciation for their professionalism. They went out of their way to make sure I was successful, not because they had every right to be frustrated that I didn't get picked, but you learn something from those guys. That to me, they're professional, but the mission and the job was more important, not trying to undermine who the new boss was or prove that I should have been the boss and not him. They went out of the way to make sure I was successful, and I'll never forget those guys. And it's just a testament to the professionalism. And again, great leaders that I encountered in my career that made me think I got great people in this organization. And that was very important. That Lonnie Mendoza and Terry Norman both, I can't thank them enough for basically teaching me how to be a pack. And get me help get me where I am today.
So this is you kind of had an unconventional route so far. I think it stays a little unconventional after the PIC job, right? And then what do you do after that?
So I was very fortunate that I was able to promote without having to move because you run this balanced family. I've been married for 40 years. We had our 4th anniversary in April, so thank you for that. And so my wife has been here in this job every step of the way with me. I mean, I'm on the job 38 years. She's on the job 38 years. So Christy's her name, and so we've been married 40 years. Got 3 children, and so we were at a point where, we had the kids in the school we liked, and so made a decision. I'm just not going to push to promote. We're going to hang on for a while, get the kids through school in this area, and it just worked out for me that I was able to promote from the patrol in charge job to an assistant chief job at sector to the deputy chief job without having to move. Now, I went on a lot of details. I went a lot of places. I was the acting director of SOG during that time period. I ran the BPSCC during that time period for a while. Went to headquarters for a number of times during that time period. Stood up the state, local, and tribal liaison office at headquarters for CBP during that time frame. So I did a lot of details, but I was able to stay there. So it's hard to find that balance, but it managed to work for us.
What was the total tenure in West Texas?
What's that?
How long were you totally in West Texas?
So I got there in 2000, and I left in probably 2014.
Yeah, that's incredible. It's unconventional, and I'm gonna acknowledge that that's rare. Right?
It's very rare.
It's rare. So I'm not gonna hide from that. But at the same time, you didn't give up. It's okay to choose family.
Oh yeah.
It's okay.
It worked out for us.
It worked out for you.
Highly recommend it.
Yeah. I mean, also the moral of the story apparently is make sure you have a great spouse.
Yeah, that's very helpful.
That's very helpful. So we're talking 2014. Then this is where, you've at this point spent several years in leadership positions, but where you start to level up into what we consider executive leadership. Yeah. Is that right?
Yes, I was asked to put in for, and I did to put in for the deputy chief's job in El Paso, and it was a senior executive position, SES position, and I, did my resume, has a few people locally help me, and it made the cut, and I got on there, and I got selected to be the deputy chief of El Paso sector as an SES position. That was a great move for me. One, I loved El Paso. El Paso's a great town. I mean, I can't say enough positive things about El Paso. Mm-hmm. And so a great experience there to do that. Scott Luck was the chief at the time, and then he ended up going to headquarters. And so I was the acting chief for a long time. I ended up going to headquarters myself for a lot of details during that time frame as well. And so we had that piece going on. So I was there for till 2017 when I was then selected to go up to headquarters.
This is for the chief of
the chief of strategic planning and analysis, and that was my first chief job.
Tell me about that job. What is that?
So strategic planning and analysis, it was a component of, I called it the brains of the organization. Us and the operation always go back and forth. I used to say, yeah, you play checkers, we play chess over here. But you develop the requirements and plans to run a big organization, because the organization evolved. It wasn't a 2,000 person organization. It was a huge organization with national security implications and everything we do. So it took a whole nother level of planning and preparation to do what we do. Is to make sure we have the requirements, we understand what we need, we get the requirements identified, we work with our other components to get those requirements. What do they cost? But primarily, I went up there at that time to build a wall. Right, that's where we were. If you look at the time frame, that's what we're doing. We had developed the requirements for our wall and wall systems. The Congress is fixing to give us billions of dollars to do something, right? And we needed to do it right, and so we had to decide what it needed to look like, where it needed to be, how high did it need to be, all those little questions. How do you justify those stuff? I spent, I don't know how many hours testifying before Congress, setting this up and understanding, justifying why we needed this, why it's important, how it works, what it'll do for us, talking about the impedance and denial capabilities that it brings to us, how that has to be worked in combination with our situational awareness and our time-bound law enforcement response, and connecting all those dots together and painting a picture in such a way that intuitively makes sense to a board relation, but it doesn't unless you lay it out in clear terms to appropriators is going to give you money for it, the American public is going to support or not support, how you can do it, those things. So all that encompasses what took up most of my time for the first few years I was up there.
So that's interesting. So SPAD, as the moniker, right, is developing requirements and justifying them to those who are writing checks and the American population. But it also feels a little political, right? You start to get in this kind of political world that we're maybe, like a kid from South Texas or West Texas didn't think they were getting into. So how does that work? So
one thing I've learned in this role, my position, I'm right where the career people meet the political.
Sure.
And it's very important that you have to draw a sharp line and set the boundaries, because now it's my job to keep the politicals off the back of everybody else that's working as far as you can. And it's difficult to do because you can get drug into it real easy, especially there are times, depending on who's in office, your political beliefs may align with them or they may not align with them. You got to block all that out, because we're federal public servants. We're there to serve whoever the people put in office, regardless of whether we agree with them politically or dispolitically.
In the executive branch.
Yeah, that's this whole executive. That's what we swear an oath to do that, right? To support and defend the Constitution, and that's part of that. So you have to draw a line and know where that boundary is, and that takes some experience, because the political people that will subtly draw you across into that game. And it may feel great at that moment, but when the administration changes, you're on an island. Right. So you have to recognize that yourself and keep you from being drug over that line, and also not allow anybody that's working for you being drug on that line as well. Our support of building a wall was something we had advocated for years. That was not a political in my mind at all. Right. I was in San Diego back in 1985 and 86 when we had landing mat. We were welding landing mat on the calling it a fence, those kind of things. So that wasn't a hard challenge for me. I could justify that in a non-political way. Yeah. Either way, can to this day, and still do to this day.
Yeah. So what I appreciate about that conversation right there is you're not a robot. You're a human being, right? And I think that sometimes, rightly or wrongly, gets lost in the public narrative, especially within the ranks. We are an apolitical organization. We're apolitical leaders. We live in the executive branch, and we execute based on facts and providing best national security advice to decision makers. So I appreciate you, being a little vulnerable, showing some humanity there, and saying it's hard. It's not. This job is not easy.
Yeah. Well, you can get drug into something very quickly that you don't need to be. And at this level, inadvertently drag your agency into it, and that's where you owe your allegiance to, is back to taking care of your people, and that's what you have to focus on.
Very well said. Thank you for that. So you're SPAD, and then we kind of accelerate into, I believe, the Executive Assistant Commissioner for Enterprise Services, which is, again, I think you said we're a very young organization generally. As CBP, we're going on, 20 plus years?
20 years.
So the vertical of the Executive Enterprise Services, of Enterprise Services is actually even younger.
It is, because, and that was... Like I said, CBP is a young organization. I mean, it's basically 20 years old. Basically, we're a teenager at best, right? And I often say CBP was a shotgun wedding at first, right? I mean, anybody that around when we were formed knows that it was, we were those customs guys, and those customs guys were like those knucklehead border, And so we spent a lot of time, and I think it's probably necessary with that, but kind of, battling back and forth, who's going to be whose boss? I don't, And so that it took a little bit to work through that. That's hard. Change is hard. There's no question. That was tough. Customs have been around since 1789. I mean, and they ceased to exist as an organization by that. So if you step in their shoes, that's very painful. I mean, and so and the Border Patrol. We've been around since 1924, and we basically all we had to do was add a patch to our uniform, right? And so once you put it in that context, I became much more empathetic to the rest of the organization. But in looking at it, we got past that, and I say we're a shotgun wedding that's grown to love each other, because our missions have aligned in such a way that we're not overlapping, we're not competing, we are complementing who we are and what we do, and it's become a much better organization because of that. Once we've kind of got that kind of settled out and going in the right direction, and so it's working out. It continues to get better how we do stuff. But when they asked me to be the Executive Assistant Commissioner of Enterprise Services, that was when I should have been retiring, because I hit mandatory retirement age in May of 2018. And when they asked me to switch over to that, they wanted someone to be an operator to run Enterprise Services, which they had not had before, for a couple of reasons. But for those that are not understanding kind of those components, let me kind of walk through that a little bit, because we had prior to that, there was a commissioner, a deputy commissioner, and 21 assistant commissioners. And say the chief of the Border Patrol was the equivalent of an assistant commissioner. Right. And they all answered up to the deputy commissioner. And that was just too much, right? So they decided to
span of control.
Yeah, it was tough. And so they decided to reorganize that. So they broke it into 6 components, 4 operational and 2 support. And the components were the U.S. Border Patrol. So the chief of the Border Patrol, Chief Ortiz, is operational title chief, but he is the equivalent of an executive assistant commissioner. Mm-hmm. The head of Office of Field Operation is executive assistant commissioner. Head of Air and Marine, the same. Head of the Office of Trade. Those are your operational components. Yeah. And I'm going to bump trade a little bit, because they all get overlooked in who they are and what they do. But I'm just pointing this out. Every year, trade puts $111 billion with a B dollars into the budget of the U.S. government. They're a huge component of what we do. So let's not, they don't have the flashy cars and uniforms. Equally important across. Yes, but and the 2 other components are the operation support, run by EAC Padilla, and then Enterprise Services. And Enterprise Services is span and control. It's all the mission support for all of CBP. It's HRM, Office of Training, OFAM, Facilities Asset Management. It's Office of Acquisitions, Procurement, Office of Accountability, OIT. All those big components are oversight of that in that program, Enterprise Services. So when they asked me to be the lead of that, my first question was, have you read my resume? I mean, what makes you think I know anything about any of that stuff?
West Texas?
What makes you think I do any of that stuff? So that was, but they wanted someone to be an operator in charge of it, because there's concerns that in that structure that maybe they are in the mindset possibly thinking they're competing with operational components and not supporting the operational components. Okay. And so we wanted to have a to have that. And it turns out that was one of the best jobs I've ever had. One of the most fulfilling. For one, I didn't know what I was doing, right? So it's a learning experience. I had to learn. I had to go back in there and and just relearn the whole process. That is very complicated work. Each one of those programs, extremely complex. I understand it. And so try to start learning that, understanding that program, very important. What I learned was we had a team of professionals that wanted to do the mission, very much wanted to do the mission, and very much so. They just needed that focus. They needed to know who we are and what we were doing. That's why I think having an operational leader, an operator's leader, was huge to that success of that operation. And I did two things there that I thought was important. I told them to get rid of the term customer service.
Yeah.
And there's some reasons for that. But it just that doesn't actually describe the relationship that we have that they have with them, because customer service implies that if you're not getting the service you need, you can go somewhere else, and that's not true, right? They can't if we're not supplying the vehicles to the Border Patrol, they can't go to the Ford dealer and buy them themselves. Right. They have to use what they get. They can't go to Radio Shacks and buy radios if they're not getting the radios they need. They have to do that. So I said, forget that. We're not going to be customer service. That's not. We're going to be partners, not just partners. We're going to be trusted partners. And what does that mean? We're going to have that relationship where we're integrated in what they think, what they need, be anticipatory of what they're doing. And the second thing I said we're going to do, we're going to provide at the speed of the operations. It's no good if they say, I need a Southside facility built here. That's great. We'll have it there next year. That's not the speed of operations. Yeah. When they need it now. So how do you provide that stuff now and still be true to the acquisition rules? That means you have to be early on in the conversations. They have to trust you. You have to trust them that when they're starting to even think about doing something like that, you're in that conversation then. So you're anticipating the needs and moving. Those are relationships that we sought to change and continue to change between the support components and the operation components of this organization.
That's awesome.
Kind of went off on a tangent there, but I
want to make sure I got that in. That's exactly that's why we're having this conversation. And I tell this story often. You mentioned training and development. So the U.S. Border Patrol Academy and the Field Operations Academy, both for Air and Marine and also OFO, actually are in the ES vertical.
Correct.
So we're uniform. 100% of my staff is Border Patrol related. Border Patrol pays us a lot of money to do this, but really, you're kind of my boss's boss technically.
Yeah.
And we're not in big Border Patrol proper. So going back to this generational change, that probably wouldn't have been a thing 20 plus years ago.
No. And so it that's why it's important to have that relationship. It's not customer service; it's partnership. That the relationship between the training components of ES and their operational components that they support and the thing. That's why that partnership is probably more critical than anywhere in that relationship, because several things. One, and this is something we make sure we talk about, and I know AC Hall is a big proponent as well, is that we know that people coming out of the operational components into the training environment, into OTT, to run the academies or working academies, that they have to, you do so knowing that they have to stay viable, and they're taking something back out of that makes them a wanted entity back in their operational components, right?
Huge on
you have to think that, and you have to know that. And so when you bring somebody in, so for like the chief of the academy, or the XD of the OFO Academy, or any of those academies, that's part of a plan. That's not a in spot. That's a spot. That's a spot that this person is going to be a chief here. I mean, it's not we're not putting someone there to stay there forever. We've been looking, and we had these discussions. It's the overall growth and succession of the organization. So let's make sure they're all integrated in all the planning for how we grow the organization, put the right leaders in the right place at the right time. All that's part of our conversations when we make those decisions, and we look at that.
I love that you said that, because you're a Border Patrol agent, you branch out and you go do this ES thing. I'm a Border Patrol agent. I branch out and I in Office and Training and Development. I call them broadening experiences. So we can be great operators. I mean, after a certain amount of time, you're pretty proficient as a Border Patrol agent. I'd like to see you be broader and deeper on many things. And I can tell you right now, and everybody has a predisposition on Office of Training and Development, and I'm not fluffing up anybody's skirt here, but it's a whole different world. Like the business of training alone, in fact, I think has made me a better leader over time. So I don't know what the next stop is going to be or when that's going to be, but my confidence level to go out and look at things differently, to assess our workforce and do those things that need to be done for the organization to mature, like you said, is just greater. And it's a testament to see guys like Chief Huffman step out of Border Patrol 2 and go do something else. It's inspirational for us.
Well, I appreciate that. It's this, and you're right. I mean, we've had opportunities to do things that kind of look beyond and broader, and it's rewarding as well too, because it's when you start learning stuff outside of this world, the acquisition world is huge. How we spend billions of dollars. How that works and how you do that is important. Our OIT, we have the most CBP has probably the most complex, challenging OIT mission in the world, maybe outside of the DoD. I mean, we store more data, we manage more data than anybody else in the federal government, again, except for the DoD and maybe some of the DoD, because we're the answer to everything, and it's huge and complex. So all that stuff, it takes a lot to understand who we are as an organization. Yeah. But I want to circle back to our academies now, because there's been a big focus on that. That leadership piece and who we put in there is important. We have the best academies. The Border Patrol Academy, I'll talk about in particular, but it is the best law enforcement academy in the country, bar none. You can look and compare it to anything else, and because I watched it evolve. I watched it evolve over the years, and what we got better. We have reached out and looked at other academies around the country, took the best here and the best there, made it and evolved into ours. And no one else turns out a better trained agent than the U.S. Border Patrol Academy when they walk out of this thing. Across bar none. And I'm not just telling it because you're here. I'm telling it because I helped build the system. Yes, right? So that's and that's our goal. We are the premier CBP as a whole, because the other academies as well. They top quality. We're the best. We are the best in this country. We're the largest and the most premier law enforcement agency in the country, without question. And I'll let anyone try to challenge me on that, and I'll in any way they want to, and do that. But that's not by accident. That's because what we want. That's what we expect, and that's what we're going to have.
Yeah. Well, I definitely appreciate you trusting us to continue to take that vision and maturing it to 2023 and beyond.
Yeah,
we owe it to national security and the people of this country to make sure that we continue to do that.
Yeah.
So personality notwithstanding, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter who's sitting here. That should be their charge, full stop, every single day.
Yeah.
So technically, if I'm not mistaken, you are technically the EAC of ES right now.
I'm the EAC of Enterprise Services. Yes. Then I've been I was the acting deputy commissioner for a while. I was
it gets wonky after this.
Yeah. I was the acting deputy commissioner. Then I was the acting chief operating officer.
Yes.
Now I'm back at the acting deputy commissioner and chief operating. So I'm actually the chief operating officer, acting chief operating officer, and the acting deputy commissioner, and the technically the real EAC. But of course, Chief Landrum's the Chief acting Scudder. EAC, and he's or Chief Scudder. Yeah. Sorry, you rhymes all look alike.
He's going to take offense to that.
The Chief Scudder is the acting EAC of Enterprise Services, and doing a great job there as well. So I'm actually wearing two hats right now.
Yeah. So when you say you're the acting deputy commissioner for a 65,000 plus person organization with all the acquisitions and the trade and this, that, and the other, distill for the audience, what is your job? What do you do?
So I can tell you what the job is, but what I've really been doing.
Perfect.
All right, because the job is, all the operational components report up to the deputy commissioner. Sure. In theory, the support components report up to the chief operating officer. Since I'm now both of those, we're at
You're
right
busy.
there. But how we balance it out is we do a couple things, because Troy Miller's the acting commissioner.
Yes.
We're all actors. Since and he does a great job, very engaged in the operation of what we're trying to accomplish, because we are the focus of everything. So we're pretty well locked up on all those decisions, hand in hand, about how we approach the challenges we're facing, the current crisis that we're seeing on the border with the migrant population leading up to May 11th, and now that it's kind of the numbers have dropped a little bit for a while. Don't know how long that's going to hold, but managing that and getting the resources in the right place, supporting our people, trying to implement the policies of the current administration as best we can, and trying to keep it all together. But my primary focus for the last couple of years is coming up with better ways to take care of our people. Because that's been, our workforce, it's been through a grind for the last 4 years. It's been through a very, very difficult grind for the last 4 years, and it's been a tough challenge. I mean, we've had been on the job, as you said, 38 years, and I've seen grinds. I know what a grind looks like, right? And this is the most challenging times I've seen in my 38 years these last 4 years, but without a doubt, as far as what our workforce is dealing with. And so, and it's tough. normally, last year we had 15 suicides across CBP, which is the most we'd ever had. Now, we'd had 14 back in 2009, so we've had high numbers before, but we just figured we had to figure out better ways to take care of our people. So the last little couple of years we've been working on is figuring out better ways to do that, and that's we've done a lot of stuff in that arena to establishing our workforce care directorate and things we're trying to accomplish. But those things are been very important, because at some point that's the best you can do is what you can to take care of your people, and that's what we've been trying to accomplish.
That's awesome. Very noble, and I definitely appreciate, again, not just because you're here, but you and Acting Commissioner Miller really do listen. I think you're illustrating that you've heard what the workforce needs, and you work unapologetically to get those things done. I think we talked at lunch the other day, is maybe not happening, all of it's happening as quite at the speed that you want it, but that's also life.
Yeah.
Right? But I would offer that it's happening faster than you probably think it is. So comparatively to what we've been through.
I hope so, because we've to make things kind of permanent in your culture, it takes a while. You got to lay a good foundation, so it's not just a fad, right? It's not something that's going to happen and go away. That you're building in something, a real level of permanence into it. So we've established the Workforce Care Directorate, and with the focus of trying to take better care of our people and what we can do those things. And we've got a lot of things that we're doing in place to do that. But I want to the concept we're doing, stolen a little bit from the academy, just so you know.
You're welcome.
And it came back. And so we're all familiar with the book Left of Bang,
yes,
or at least in the training environment. All right, that book. And so it's funny. I'd read that book independently years ago, and I called Dan Harrison, he's the chief, and said, "I don't know if you read this book, but you ought to look at that." And he said, "Not only have we read it, we've had the author up here, and we've been working some of our tactics with it." I said, "Oh, okay, all right, well that's good." So I'm glad we're on the same page. But basically, for those that haven't read the book, the Left of Bang concept is basically, it's written by a Marine officer trying to teach young Marines to go into combat in Afghanistan, and I'm going to oversimplify this, but basically trying to teach them to have a bias towards action before something happens, to be attuned to these pre-incident indicators and have a bias towards intervening early. So, and the concept Left of Bang, bang is when a terrorist blows something up, bang is when an active shooter kills everybody, bang is when something really bad happens. So we're applying that same context to our workforce care directorate. And for that context, for us, bang is a suicide. Sure. Bang is an arrest for DWI. Bang is an arrest for domestic violence. Bang is you're angry because you're in a toxic work environment and you leave the workforce early unnecessarily. That's in that concept. That's bang. So we're trying to do things in this workforce care directive to keep things left of that, which includes, yes, it includes the suicide prevention training and the intervention, but so much more than that. It's the stuff that you can get from your backup care, your child care, all the stressors that you may be in your life, your financial literacy training, and a whole number of things to keep there, or any other mental health challenges you may be having that you need to deal with to keep you way left of this problem over here. And that's what that whole concept is. And so we just applied that same concept to this directorate. And I like using that terminology because that connects better with your operating components. They get Left of Bang. They get what that means. They get that things, and it's one. I'm a simple guy, so I need simple words and simple concepts to be able to explain it. So it helps me talk through it as well.
Good deal. So I think, again, I mentioned it up front. We're in the What's Important Now podcast. I think you talked about workforce care. That's vitally important to what you do. Maybe close us out with another one or two things unrelated to workforce care that is on your mind. And forgive me for saying this out loud in the podcast, but I think the 38 years plus is coming to an end. We're about 30 days out or so.
Yeah.
My guess is you're thinking about a few things.
So a couple things that kind of evolved in my thinking in the last few years or number of years, and that's what we want to be as an organization, what we want the legacy, this agency to be, right? So I said before, 20 years organization, we're very young, but we're still very formative. We're still very malleable as an agency. Right. So I think leaders, everyone, especially leadership, should be coming to work every day trying to decide what we want to be. This is a rare opportunity. Never in our lifetimes will we have the opportunity to shape the department of a federal government. We're not going to have that chance again, right? DOJ, it's institutionalized. It's not changing. Commerce, Treasury, they're not changing. DHS, we're still deciding who we are. We have an opportunity to do that. So who do we want to be? What do we want to be as an organization? So we come to work, we need to be thinking of what policies, what decisions, how can we make this the best place to be to fulfill our mission? And I like thinking about those things. I talk about leadership and what does that mean? And when I talk about leadership, I talk there's three things, three pillars that I talk about. And this is what I say, if you're a leader in this organization, this is what you owe your people. These are three components, and we're going to be shaping how we do things in the future going forward. I've got a plan laid out that's going to go well beyond me because it takes to do that. But I talk about three things. One, leadership. What does it mean to be a leader? Are you accountable? How does that work? Do you do your job? Number two, integrity. Mm-hmm. That's key for our organization. When you're an organization like ours that's in charge of holding the public trust, that's the most important thing for us to have. And three, take care of your people. I usually tell the story this way. When I joined the Border Patrol, our street creds were this. If someone another agent called a Border Patrol agent, three things showed up. When they could shoot, they could track, and they could speak Spanish. I mean, that's why if somebody else called us, that's what they expect to show up. Now, sometimes they got a lot of other stuff they didn't anticipate when that right. But you got those you got those three things, right? That was our street creds. What the goal is, our goal is, the commissioner's goal is, and my goal is what do we want the street creds of a leader that comes out of CBP to be? Yeah. That's what we're going to, and this is what we want them to be. If somebody else calls for a leader out of CBP, I want someone to say, I don't know anything about them, but I know this. One, they're a leader. Mm-hmm. Number two, they have integrity. Mm-hmm. And three, they know how to take care of their people. Yeah. Because I believe that's what we owe people. Yeah. Anybody you lead, you owe them your leadership. You owe them to be there in the moment, to be accountable for what you do and what you say. Number two, you owe them your personal integrity. That's a debt you owe them. If you're going to inspire someone to do what you say, to help you accomplish a goal or do something, they need to know they have confidence in you, they're not going to be embarrassed by you, and that you mean what you say. And number three, you owe them your commitment to take care of them. And they have to have confidence that you're committed to those three things. If you're committed to those three things, the mission will surpass your whatever expectation you have, it will surpass that. The people will take you that far. That's been proven to me time and time again, where I've just been, I think I think I can get the team to do this at this level, and they go 10 times what I thought he could do. And it's all because give them the right opportunities, they will do that for you. It's just, you just got those three things: leadership, integrity, take care of your people.
I love it. I do not think that there is a better way to end our conversation than those three things. Chief.
Thank you. Well, I thank you for the opportunity to talk about some of this. This is kind of stuff that I'm passionate about, and I intend this will outlive all of us well into the future of this organization if we set the foundation right, as we shape who we are as an organization.
I love it. So on behalf of a grateful nation and a grateful organization, thank you for 38 plus years. You will be missed.
Appreciate it very much. It's an honor. I'll leave this one last thing. In this job, the days are long, but the years are short. Trust me on that.
That sounds like a hashtag to me. So normally I end the podcast by looking in one of these cameras and saying honor first, but I'd like you to do it.
All right. Honor first.